Do what you have to do to get a lead on this maniac.
And if I find him?
Do what you do best.
Stallone is Cobra, the strong arm of the law.
Now that's classic 80s, for sure. Again, voiceover on the trailer. I love it. I'm Kevin.
Yep. I'm Jake.
And this is Movie Matters. We are doing the 1986 film Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone as Marion Cobretti. Marion Cobretti. Just like, let me take the weirdest name ever and make it mine because I want to sound cool, but also not appear to try too hard, even though I'm trying hard.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of trying hard in this movie, but it's pretty great. It's
so over the top. So, in my opinion, this is like one of those movies that kind of is like in the same vein of Roadhouse, where it's so bad that it's just ridiculous and it's fun and it's good, but it's still like really bad. Yeah, it's got a lot of. It actually has some like decent action sequences and stuff. And I didn't feel at any point like it dragged. Which is nice. But like afterwards, thinking about it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of just like plot holes and unnecessary things in this movie. But you know, we'll talk about that. The whole movie made like zero sense to me.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've seen it. I think the same for you, right, Jake?
Yep.
Yeah. So my coworkers have told me about it and said it was ridiculous, and so. Right in the middle of the 80s, smack dab, and it's a very, very 80s movie, especially with the music and the macho action and the over-the-top dialogue. Sylvester Stallone even wrote the script, which is cool.
Yeah, this is hardcore 80s.
Yeah.
I think this is probably a pretty decent example of like the quintessential 80s action movie.
Agreed.
So yeah, this is a good one for us to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously in this time it was, machoism and let's see how many people we can kill and shit we can blow up. And obviously that, Sylvester Stallone was kind of in competition with Arnold Schwarzenegger at this time. Personally, I was never a big fan of Sylvester Stallone at a young age. I always watched Arnold movies and thought Arnold movies were just way better. But lately I've been getting into Sylvester Stallone movies, and they're actually pretty good, minus this movie. But I recently watched all the Rocky movies. Like, he's actually really good. He's a really good actor. He's surprisingly a pretty good writer. Again, minus this movie. Like, this movie is just not great, but you can tell there was so much left on like the cutting room floor.
Absolutely,
yeah. Let's just there was a rough cut that was a lot longer for sure, and like so many other scenes that were just cut, and you can tell that definitely by watching this movie, because like you said, there's so many plot holes and so many random things that happen in the movie where you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump into it. Do you have a plot synopsis up on this?
Yeah, I think so. I can read it here. I'll just read the basic one.
Yeah, the one that I read made it sound super interesting and like exciting. And then like if I hadn't read that plot synopsis, I would never have gotten that synopsis from the movie. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. All right, let's hear it. What was the one you read?
So I think the one I read was the one on HBO Max, which was LA officer marrying Cobra Cobretti encounters or has to deal with a cult in Los Angeles that is murdering people in like senseless crimes, which is like fairly accurate to the movie.
Yeah.
Now, like if you watch the movie, the cult element of this is in the opening sequence and then never addressed again.
It's never, yeah, it's never explained. And this,
No.
yeah, and this cult is like people in suits dancing and like clanking axes together.
Yeah.
Which is like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like the opening scene in general is insane. Like,
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone with like voiceover, just rough and gruff as fuck. He's like, "There's 100 murders every 3 minutes." Like, it's just like so over the top. I'm just like, what is happening? And then it's quick cutting between, like I said, guys in suits from the supposed cult clanking axes together in some random ass warehouse that's dark as fuck.
And
And
you
then,
never see again.
yeah, there's no relevance to it. What you think is Sylvester Stallone on a motorcycle, and it's like red. The whole screen's red.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember literally saying to myself, like, this is still going on? Like, it's such a long sequence in the beginning
Yeah,
where
it
I'm
is.
just like, what is happening? Like, what is this movie?
It was kind of cool, because it does kind of draw you in.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is kind of like, there's like all this weird shit going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it turns out that the guy in the motorcycle is not Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
It's a guy who like goes into a grocery store and just starts shooting people with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Then I don't think you actually see Stallone until like maybe 8 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. And I feel like they never address that this guy who goes into the grocery store to just kill people is like, he's like part of the cult, but it's never really like, I feel like there's no like connection that's apparent. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, and like I think they briefly flash the tattoo because like all the cult members seem to have this tattoo on their wrists. Again, never explained explicitly. It's just like implied throughout the movie, which we'll get to my biggest plot hole a little bit later on the tattoos, but they kind of link him to the cult, but not in any kind of real hard way. Yeah, so it's like you kind of have to do a lot of like piecing things together in your head, which is like very odd for an 80s action movie because usually they explain in like a monologue the entire plot to
shove
you.
it in your face. Yeah. And then kill people and blow shit up.
Yeah, and then blow people up.
Yeah, so that whole supermarket scene was crazy. I mean, it's just like so over the top too. Like, the guy that's killing everyone in there, Marco Rodriguez, who I've seen him in a bunch of movies. He was also in Eastbound and Down as the like coach on the Mexican team, the Mexican baseball team, which I love that show. He always has weird looking skin, in my opinion. But he was actually pretty good in this scene, and like I love when he just like sends the guy. He's like, "Oh, you're free!" Like sends the guy running down the supermarket like hallway, if you will, and just like or the aisle, and shoots him in the back with a shotgun, and it's just like just like so over the top dramatic.
Which also doesn't really make that much sense, but
yeah, it makes zero sense. And just the whole supermarket scene in general, I feel like Sylvester Stallone has like 12 chances to kill this guy, and shoot him and like take him out or like disarm him or anything, and just like, and then all of a sudden pops in, but I don't know, like I love how the cops are just like, we gotta call Cobra, the shit's like fucking up, and like 2 seconds later he shows up in a 1950s Mercury, like just was already there, like
like the and the I do kind of like the element of like tension between him and the like commanding officers, as there's the one guy, which I don't even know if they ever say his name, but he's kind of a dick. And then there's like the police chief who's like on the fence about Cobra. Where I think the police chief is the one that says we gotta call Cobra, and the asshole's like, no, we're not doing that. And like, he's kind of like the Weasley prick. Yeah, it's like, which like a lot of times I feel like there's always one of those guys in 80s action movies that's kind of like the pussy that like no one likes, and like they just get in the way of everything.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like the police commander in Die Hard that's like keeps telling Al that like he's wrong about everything even though he's right, and like
the principal from Breakfast Club.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of a staple that like this movie kind of carries through.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
the captain is
does
Art
add
LaFleur.
something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Art
Yep.
LaFleur, who's Babe Ruth in Sandlot.
Oh yeah.
And then Andrew Robinson, Detective Monty, that's the guy who's the Weasley pussy guy. He's kind of a 70s actor, like mainly. He was in Dirty Harry. He was the bad guy in Dirty Harry, which is a super cool movie.
That's where I remember him from.
Yeah. I just recently watched a movie called Charlie Varick, which is from 1973, with Walter Matthau. Super underrated 70s heist movie that I really like, that I kind of grew up on. And he's in that, and he's like a hillbilly, and he gets the shit kicked out of him in a trailer. so that's how I always picture him. It's just this like weaselly fucking guy. So perfect casting for that. But yeah, back to that supermarket scene where there's just so much product placement. Like, you see it in the trailer, even like he drinks a Coors Light right next to a huge Pepsi sign. Like, there was just over the top marketing and product placement in this movie. Just a ton of Pepsi stuff, like a Toys R Us commercial, just like so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like the lines that Sylvester Stallone like says, like, again, it's just him writing the screenplay is classic because it's just like, what's gonna make me sound cool as fuck?
Yeah.
And just like, you're the disease and I'm the cure. Like, just like, all right. Like, I laughed at all those over the top, one-liners that he's trying to be so cool about.
He has a couple decent ones.
Yeah.
There were like some huge missed opportunities, though, in my opinion, for one-liners, but it's okay because the 80s is chock full of them. So
yeah. Well, again, I think it's him trying to compete with, Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
In that era, for sure, with his classic one-liners. Like, if you think about it, like, Sylvester Stallone really doesn't have a ton of classic one-liners, specifically in this movie, at least. Like, I mean, they're just so over the top. Like, I'm bad for your health. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. The one thing that this movie did not do well was the playful banter between the two partners. Which also, like, his partner, I can't remember what his name is in the movie. It's like
Gonzalez.
Yeah. He is like not even really essential to the movie in any way, shape, or form. Like, they have these like exchanges that are like really shitty and like not like fun. Like the way that like Danny Glover and Mel Gibson have like awesome banter and like Lethal Weapon, and like even like in Die Hard, like John McClane and Al have these like little banters over the microphone or the walkie-talkie, and they're not even partners, but like it's definitely one of the things that's a little lacking in this movie that like you would expect in like a good 80s action movie,
Agreed 100%. Yeah, he's just, that guy Gonzalez is just like, he was kind of out of place, like you said. Like, he just has like that, classic like cab driver style, like old person type hat, like a train conductor hat almost, if you will. I forget what those are called.
It's like the paperboy hat or whatever.
Yeah, paperboy hat. Yeah, thank you. Just like him wearing that all the time, and him being like, he almost is like Italian in it, and like his name is Gonzalez. Like,
the thing for me that was like really distracting was that I'm 95% sure that actor is Poppy in Seinfeld, the restaurant owner that doesn't wash his hands.
Oh, I think you're right.
I think
you're right. Yeah.
So the whole time I'm just picturing him being like, Poppy, and like.
I love that episode. That episode's so good.
It's like the whole time I'm just thinking about Poppy and Seinfeld instead of like paying attention.
That's so good.
Yeah, I mean,
he was in Dirty Harry too.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch that movie again.
I mean, his character is kind of out of place, like you said. Doesn't really bring much. He gets absolutely wrecked in like the final sequence, but somehow survives and like just walks away from it.
And like,
like,
yeah, you kind of knew that was gonna happen too. Like, I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna get fucking wrecked.
well, you know, I don't want to be an asshole, but I feel like it would have been better if he would have actually died and like gotten Cobra really pissed, and like gone after the guys harder, or something.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's just like I don't know, the whole ending to me, like the action sequence in the end was pretty awesome.
It was cool,
but,
yeah.
like the actual ending was like so unsatisfying.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, again, it's the writing. It just could have been way better. There was so much potential. Like, honestly, if this movie was remade or a sequel was made to kind of just like flesh it out a little bit more, like it would have been good. I mean, there was supposed to be a sequel, but it kind of never materialized. And Sylvester Stallone has always loved this particular character. Yeah, like the plot holes were just bad. I mean, just going back to the beginning of just like him going back to his apartment and cleaning his gun. He pulls a fucking egg carton out of the freezer. Just like has gun cleaning supplies in it, and then takes out a frozen leftover pizza, cuts it with scissors for no fucking reason, and then starts eating it while watching that like Toys R Us commercial, just like like while wearing sunglasses inside, just like what is happening?
Yeah, like. So I mean, that's probably a decent transition to start talking about some of the plot holes and the shortcomings. So like for me, the biggest plot hole in the entire movie are the tattoos that all of these cult members have. Beyond just never addressing the cult explicitly, in the movie, but like Cobra kills 10 people before like they even get to a point where like where he needs to evacuate the girl that they're trying to kill from the city. So like there's 10 cult member corpses that all have this tattoo and no one links that to anything. Like it's never addressed, it's never brought up.
Yeah.
But they show it. They show it several times. So, like, you would think the cops would be like, oh, these people all have the same tattoo. And, like, I kept waiting for that conversation to happen, and it just never comes up. So, like, to me, it's kind of bizarre. Because, like, spoiler alert, but one of the cult members is a police officer.
Yeah.
And she's kind of the mole in their organization that feeds them this information about the girl that they're trying to kill, who was a witness to one of their crimes.
Which they show her at the beginning, right? Like when they're in the van trying to kill that one girl. Okay.
Yeah. So you know the whole time.
Yeah.
But like again, like she presumably has this tattoo. And like no one ever notices, like no one ever makes the connection that like all these dead bodies have this tattoo, and then this police officer has a tattoo. Like it's just very
missed opportunity.
Yeah, huge missed opportunity.
Yeah,
and like I feel like it, again, like I feel like every movie we've talked about so far, we've said should be remade. But like this one could actually be made into an unbelievably cool movie if they really dove into the cult aspect and really pushed the central theme of this movie, which is like a hard push against crime. Which they
should have fleshed that out even more.
Yeah, so like that's, to me, I think one of the cool or interesting aspects of this movie is this the tension between Cobretti and the like police command, where like and again, it's not fleshed out enough. It's kind of leans much heavier to Stallone's character's side of the argument, but like throughout the movie, there's this question kind of posed on like how far is too far for police officers to go in order to stop crime, and like Cobra's position is we should just kill all of these people.
Yeah, shoot
and
first, ask questions last.
Right, which is like hardcore 80s, and like I think a lot of it I think is a reaction to the crime levels of the 70s when people were just fed up with having to deal with all this crime in the big city and just petty theft, muggings, like all kinds of crime in the 70s was like at its peak of all time. Then slowly through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, it steadily declined. But like, I think a lot of these action movies are a response to that huge crime wave of the 70s, and also the massive uptick in like serial killings in the 70s and early 80s. Which like this movie kind of addresses early on, saying that like there's a serial killer, and which it's actually this group, not an individual. But like that was definitely a legitimate fear, in the early 80s and 70s.
Well, this kind of pays homage to, not really homage, but like it's kind of referencing the Night Stalker in the 80s from Richard Ramirez in LA. And like, I mean, the guy's even called Night Slasher. And it's played by Brian Thompson, who is creepy as fuck. Like, just fucking yoked in the movie, just like weird cheek structure, but like, he did awesome in it, in my opinion. He was great.
His voice sounds like it's manipulated, but it's not.
Cobra. Like it's so weird. Yeah. He a funny like connection. I like how we're making all these connections to other movies. It's just funny because seeing all these guys in this movie, it's like, oh, I've seen him in these newer movies. He's in Joe Dirt. He plays Buffalo Bob or whatever, the guy who like captures Joe Dirt.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and like he's in drag in that movie and just looks creepy as fuck and just like, I was like, oh shit, like that's I know him from Joe Dirt.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, like Night Slasher. His knife is super dope.
Yeah, and like again, I think this is something that should have been fleshed out more, and probably was. I think to your point, I bet an hour of this movie was cut.
Oh yeah,
from
rough
like
cut
the
was
original.
over 2 hours long.
Yeah, so like, I think there's a lot of fleshing out, but like in the interest of keeping this a like digestible 80s action movie, they probably cut a lot of the like actual plot out.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because like this is a high potential storyline, and like could have just been so much better if they would have delved into the cult aspect, the major themes of the movie surrounding like violence and law enforcement versus like basically vigilantism, almost.
Yeah, like and the media's like depiction of violence, they kind of brush on that at the beginning.
Right.
There was a lot of missed opportunity, but yeah, like I said, the rough cut was over 2 hours long. They were kind of concerned it wouldn't be a hit, so they chopped it up and made it 87 minutes long, which is like nothing. But that they wanted to do that so they could increase the number of screenings, so they could get more people in seats. Which is it's like I get that, but also at the same time that cuts so much. It was originally going to be like rated X too because it was super violent. The whole movie was like kind of violent already, and like almost horror-ish. Like it had that slasher feel to it, which I liked. Right. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think that definitely added something to it because it did have that vibe through a lot of, especially the early like 2/3 of the movie are very much almost like a horror movie, which is pretty cool. But I think this movie is a testament to like Stallone's ability to write and create good movies. It's like, I mean, Rocky is probably like his like shining example of how good he can do, you know?
Oh yeah.
I feel like this one was probably just executives fucked it up. Probably.
That, and again, I think it's him competing with Schwarzenegger to, try and make something quick, and like Commando. He was trying to compete with Commando, because Commando came out in like '85, I think.
Oh, okay.
And in that movie, fucking Schwarzenegger kills like hundreds of guys.
Yeah.
In this movie, Stallone only kills 41, which is still a fuck ton.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, overall, it was like fine to watch.
Yeah, it wasn't,
like I said, it was entertaining, and like,
Yeah.
it's not boring. It's not like so bad in the moment that you're like, this is unwatchable.
Yeah,
Just
agreed.
leaves you a little unsatisfied in the end.
Definitely wanting more, for sure.
Yeah, and like the one thing I want to talk about in the end that was like really a missed opportunity was when he comes face to face with the main villain in this like metal forge or whatever foundry.
Yeah.
The bad guy goes on this awesome monologue about how like he's going to create this revolution, and like violence is the only way to like cleanse the earth, and like all this like really cool badass like 80s villain shit. And like Stallone has the opportunity right there to drop like an epic one-liner, and it just falls flat. And then like he has the opportunity to just shoot the guy in the face and doesn't take it either, which like would have been, in my opinion, would have been a way more satisfying ending to this than,
and then said as
how
well
it actually, how it actually ended, like, because like,
I mean,
instead of like an epic like solid end there, like for some reason they end up in a fist fight, and it just drags a little bit, and it's like, okay, you could have just fucking killed this guy. Like,
again, trying to be macho 80s, let me flex my muscles and show how badass I am. It's, again, Stallone trying to be a fucking macho badass. Yeah, just like in the ending where he's got a matchstick in his mouth the whole time for no reason, but it finally pays off when he lights the guy on fire in the factory. The factory at the end, like the forge, kind of gave me RoboCop vibes, because the ending of RoboCop is like the big finale is kind of at this factory and stuff. It also gave me Terminator 2 vibes. Obviously, Terminator 2 came out
much later.
90,
10
91.
years later, almost. 7 years later. Yeah.
Wait, no, 5. My math's horrible. 5.
Yeah, I'm just saying yes to everything you say. Yes.
Math is way off. Yes. Yeah, and like, again, I want to go back to like just all these ridiculous kind of 80s moments, just ridiculous moments in general. Like, the quick cutting of introducing Bridget Nielsen's character Ingrid, the kind of love interest, the girl that's being chased by this cult. She's introduced in like this modeling photography session where there's just random fucking robots like that are never explained. It's like, let's just make this 80s, and like it's very 80s because it's quick cutting, and like there's 80s music, and like the hair and the outfits are super 80s. I loved that. I thought it was hilarious, but it was just so over the top and ridiculous,
unneeded.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot of cool references to movies in this too. Like when there's the big car chase scene, they're driving over kind of these almost canals. Looked like maybe Venice, California, in Los Angeles. Like, I feel like it was almost like the movie Bullet from the 60s. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Steve McQueen, where they're driving through San Francisco and kind of jumping these hills. And it's, again, over-the-top action with this car chase scene. They're just like, Stallone's in his Merc, and then there's the bad guys in this one, like, it looks like a Caprice. And they're just, like, driving all erratic. I was just laughing so hard at that. It And like then they shoot this tanker truck with one shotgun shot and it explodes just because they're like, we need explosions in this movie.
Yeah,
just
for real.
over the top. Yeah, just I don't know, man. It just
in the final like showdown, where he's prepping for like these guys to come and like try and like kill them at this like random house in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was like a motel of like houses.
Yeah,
and like you don't know how they got there.
Yeah,
they just randomly go there.
Also unexplained, but
yeah,
he's like taking all these guns out of his bag. He whips like 6 grenades out, like puts them on the table. It's like, holy shit! Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Then he's got his like I don't know what it is. It kind of looks like an Uzi, but it has like a forward grip on it. It's like. It's kind of weird, but it's got this like giant 80s laser sight on it, which is like kind of cool. Like at the time, I bet that was like, whoa, like super cool. So like that's kind of funny, which I think Schwarzenegger has the same one in Terminator on his
in the first
handgun.
one.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he uses the same type of thing, but
nice. Yeah,
it was just like. So that sequence was like very 80s action movie where it's like, look at all the guns and like the explosives and like all the other stuff. Like,
that whole scene is ridiculous where they're like in a pickup truck and he's just like shooting all these guys on motorcycles and like none of them have guns. Like they're just like riding to like go after them. Just over the top. But it was still kind of cool, still fun. Just like, again, let's kill as many bad guys as we can in this scene. But yeah, going back to that Forge factory, like I thought some of the camera work was pretty cool. Like, you know, it shows there's a shot of Stallone where he's, I think the bad guy, the Night Slasher's giving his monologue, and it's like Stallone has like a red eye and like a white eye, like the way it was shot, like and it was like, you know, the angel and the devil type thing where it's like, do I kill this guy? Do I bring him in? Like I thought that was cool. Again, a lot of stuff that could have been fleshed out a little bit more. But like when the Night Slasher dies and he like screams like 4 times, and, like the quick cuts of him like ah, just so good, so good.
Which that's another interesting thing that they did bring full circle, which I kind of liked. So in the beginning, after the supermarket shootout, one of the reporters runs up and he's asking him if he was justified in lethal force, and then says like, hey, doesn't everyone have rights or something like that to Stallone? And Stallone kind of like brushes him off or no, he grabs the guy and like shoves his face into one of the dead bodies and is like, does his family have rights? Or something like that.
Did this guy's family, what about this guy's family that's dead?
And so at the end in the monologue, the Night Slasher says like, you have to bring me in, even I have rights or something like that. And that's where I think Stallone had an opportunity to say something so like I can't remember what his one-liner is, but like he had a good opportunity to like really solidify his position as like a vigilante cop almost, where like instead he says something that's like really wishy-washy and like not like, like it would have been cooler if he was like, I'm the executioner, or like I'm the judge,
jury, and
like,
executioner.
That would have been a much better like one-liner.
Agreed.
And like really kind of tied up that like debate in the movie, because I feel like that it's kind of just left hanging, and like
they should have leaned more into him being a vigilante and like above the law, if you will, like taking the law into his own hands, which I mean he kind of does, but like there's even a scene where he like is going to park in front of his house and like randomly bumps into these gang members' car, and the guy's like, what the fuck, man? And like he just like rips his shirt for no reason. And then like later in the movie, it's unexplained. He's like pulling back up to his place and like taps the horn, and they like pull forward like they respect him now. It just again so random. Like it could have been more fleshed out with him being a badass. Yeah,
like there was probably another interaction between them that got cut.
Yeah.
to like reestablish that. But yeah, again, like
A lot of missed opportunity.
yeah, I feel like this movie at its full rough cut was probably much better.
Yeah, I hope
like,
they released that.
That would be kind of cool to see. But yeah,
Which-
I think this is another one that like could be remade. And, like,
Yeah.
I think this could even be remade with Stallone today,
Oh,
and
yeah.
be like the old cop that's like stuck in the 80s.
Where he's about to
and he's just
retire
like,
and-
I don't give
yeah.
a fuck. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
like,
actually a great idea. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
And
that would be pretty
he could
cool.
direct it because
Yeah, for
apparently he like, even though it's like George P. Cosmatos or whatever his name is, he directed this movie, but it was like widely regarded that Stallone actually directed like the majority of this film and was in charge of everything basically. So, give that to his ego maybe a bit because he just had a big ego in the '80s for sure. But
Yeah.
this movie also, like when I was watching it, gave me Drive vibes with Ryan Gosling. I was watching this
little
like,
bit, yeah.
even just the opening of him like saying, there's all these murders and rapes and all this shit. Like the beginning of Drive is there's 100,000 streets in this city. Like you don't need to know the route, and it's just like I was like, oh, this is like Drive, and then obviously the matchstick toothpick, and then I read into the trivia a bit, and like Nicholas Winding Refn, who directed Drive, is a huge fan of this movie. Like,
okay.
and like there's a lot of homages to it in Drive, and I was just like, that was cool to kind of pick up on those little things. But
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
yeah, but yeah, the bad guy dying at the end, just like getting hooked, and then into this huge random thing of fire. Just
Yeah.
what, and then they just like the ending where he Stallone punches Monty in the face, the kind of Weasley detective, just punches him in the face. Is so over the top, and then they just him and Ingrid steal a biker, like the gang's motorcycle, and just ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
to a classic '80s song that was made for the movie, which was so out of place.
Yeah, it does not fit at all with the tone of the movie. Like, which is kind of like an '80s trope too, where they seem to not be able to match up.
Yeah. Let's just put upbeat
pop music to the movie that they're making, but like
80s, man. 80s.
But yeah, the punching somebody in authority seems to also be an '80s trope.
Yes.
That like, I don't know, like where it comes from, but I mean, like Die Hard has a big one where Holly punches the reporter in the face.
Yeah.
And then
Thornhill, right? Is his name Thornhill?
Yeah. And I think
Or Thornburg.
doesn't
Thornburg. Thornburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
McClane almost punches the police chief in the face too.
Yeah.
Before what's his face comes out of the building with the AUG.
yeah. Well, no, he comes out of the body bag.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, obviously we like other movies better than this one.
Yeah.
But I recommend watching it. I mean, it's worth a watch. Again, 87 minutes, super quick. It's hilarious when it's not supposed to be, so that makes it a fun watch. It's Stallone trying to be badass, and it's laughable, but it's entertaining. So I say
it's entertaining.
Give it a shot, and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
All
all
right.
right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. See ya.